Bonnie Patterson, the wake-up call. The wake-up call, Bonnie Patterson.
I still remember when I got the call. It wasn't a phone call, it was like the call. I was in Bible college and I was studying American history, and it was in the colonial period and the teenagers were finding their apprenticeships, and I thought to myself, what would I be doing back then? Oh yeah, Bonnie, you would have been a slave, sweetheart. And I was like, oh, how about that? And in that moment, I felt like God was telling me, people are still slaves, Bonnie. Not physical bondage, but mental bondage. People are slaves to their fears, so they stay in their comfort zone. People are slaves to their comfort, so they don't pursue their purpose. So I'm like, God, you want me to wake them up? Is that what I'm hearing? Because if so, put me in, coach. Yes, Bonnie. Oh, and by the way, your mission starts now. It's your job in your church. Have fun, kid. Wow. Okay. So this job that I was currently at, the airport, it's a Mexican cantina, super busy. We made so much money, but the work environment was horrible. I can remember the cooks never had everything that they needed. They didn't have support. No call, no shows happened all the time. So as a result, I got to come in and work as a server and a cook for $5 an hour. How about that? All the favorites got the best shifts, and I was not one of the favorites. And I remember thinking, why doesn't anybody say anything? Girl, that's just the way it is. And I went with it for a while until I got smacked on my rear by a male coworker, and I was like, that's it, I'm going to HR. And they laughed at me again. They're like, girl, that's just the way it is here. And I was like, well, I'm Vivian Wilson's granddaughter. They're going to learn. So I marched into HR. I told them everything that I had to tell them about their venue, and I voiced my concerns. And do you know what happened? Nothing. And it was at that time I decided I would take my talents elsewhere. And even though I didn't wake up HR, I did wake up my coworkers. Several of them realized, we don't need this place. I'm gonna go back to school. Or there's better restaurants, I can go work there. And I literally found out last night that the Orlando International Airport workers just got their first contract drafted for the union after fighting for all these years. So I left feeling pretty good about myself. I was like, God, what's next? He goes, okay, you know your favorite theme park, right? And I'm like, stop. Oh my gosh, yes, okay, I'm gonna go, I'll work there. Oh my God, yes, it's gonna be perfect. It wasn't perfect. Far from perfect. It was a literal same situation and a venue that was 10 times bigger, which means the problems were 10 times bigger. I can remember walking into the dish pit with dishes, water up to my ankles, handing them to my coworker, who's also standing in water up to his ankles with a tiny dishwasher for this huge venue while getting rained on from the second floor water. I can remember my cooks like, we don't have enough plates, and so they don't have enough plates, so the food's taking a long time. Because the food's taking a long time, the managers are yelling at them, and they're getting yelled at while they're slaving over hot grills and hot fryers. They haven't had a break. They haven't had water. And speaking of no breaks, 12 to 14-hour shifts with no breaks was standard at this venue. And at the end of the day, you know, I can wipe my little server tears with my server tips, but my coworkers couldn't. They're over here making $10 an hour. And again, I asked them, guys, why doesn't anyone say anything? Oh, Bonnie, it's just the way it is here, you know? It's like, I got you. I went back to HR several times, sent several emails. I even drafted plans for how we could fix this dishwasher problem and gave them advice like, hey, your managers could also use some John Maxwell books. I have some if you would like them. And they actually listened. We started using, it was a 4-story restaurant. We started using the basement dishwasher. The managers came back from their conferences with baskets full of John Maxwell books. And after that, those of us that worked 39 plus hours a week and were forced to clock out early so we could save on labor and didn't get full-time benefits, we got our benefits. And We also got a break too, it was 30 minutes if you wanted to. So when 2020 rolled around and I was ready to leave to start my business, I felt pretty good about myself. Which brings our story full circle. I didn't mention the church. Now, I had gone there for years. This was my home. And throughout my time there, I found myself, again, bringing to the attention of the leaders things that didn't jive so well with the congregation. Like the fact that we tended to cater to one demographic more than the other. Or that we tend to reprimand the leaders, the elders, much more harshly than we did those that were very new to the faith and still learning. And the one that caused the most division was the racial rhetoric and the divisive debates that we would get into during politics. They didn't think it was that big of a deal. Bonnie, that's just the way it is, whatever. And I got tired of fighting that fight. So I finally left. And then 2020 rolls around. COVID happened. George Floyd happened. The world broke. And so did this congregation whose leaders refused to acknowledge the cracks that were developing beneath the surface for years. I can remember the leaders reaching out and having to make a public announcement addressing the fact that they did not lead in a way that had the best interest of the whole congregation, and in a way that kept their best interest in mind, not just for now, but for the future. And so after they made that announcement, I also got a call from my former pastors, like, hey, Bonnie, we're sorry we didn't listen. They got the call, even if it was a little late. 2020 was a wake-up call for all of us, myself included. After spending my summer answering questions for people who really were genuinely not understanding what's going on, speaking at town centers and places where people are like, can you just explain to us because we don't know. Spent my summer doing that, and like most people during 2020, I was like, hey, you always said you were going to do that thing when you had more time, and now you have all the time in the world. So then I looked up my local Toastmasters club that my friend was a president of, and I was like, well, I should feel at home here if he was president. And I remember walking up to the front door and looking in and seeing all these men, very few women, and nobody that looked like me. And I looked up, I'm like, God, are you serious? You got this, kid. So I grabbed the door, put me in, coach.